History is not written by the victors, but by the survivors. And in the great terrible myth of the Horus Heresy, survival itself was often a heresy against a new dark order. This is the story of the first warning, the first truth delivered from the heart of the first lie. Behold the frigate Eisenstein, seen here as a desperate silhouette against the poisoned, corpse-choked atmosphere of Isstvan III. Aboard this vessel, battle captain Nathaniel Garro of the Death Guard Legion chose loyalty over brotherhood, defying his own Primarch to escape the greatest betrayal in human history. Fleeing the massacre orchestrated by the Warmaster Horus, Garro and his few loyalists undertook a monumental leap of faith. A blind, navigator-less jump into the warp to carry word of the treason to Terra. It was an act born from unshakable conviction, a defiance he voiced to his treacherous kin.
I will not break faith. Not now, not ever.
The journey of the Eisenstein was more than an escape. It was the delivery of a terrible message. A poisoned truth that would tear the Imperium apart and set the galaxy ablaze. From this single act of desperate loyalty, the Age of Darkness would truly begin. The pretext was simple, an archetypal Imperial compliance action. Planetary Governor Vardus Prahl of Isstvan III had declared independence. The Warmaster himself, at the head of a fleet of unprecedented power, would make an example of this traitor. But the rebellion was a phantom, the compliance a lie. The true targets were not the people of Isstvan, but the Emperor's loyal sons within Horus's own legions. 4 legions made planetfall, the sons of Horus, the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Emperor's children. From their ranks, 100,000 Astartes, those whose loyalty to Terra was deemed unbreakable, were selected for the initial assault. They deployed to the planetary capital of Vanak, an army that could conquer a star system, sent to crush a city. As their boots touched the ash-blown plains, fleet communications were deliberately severed. They were alone, an army of orphans. Above the shrouded world, the second phase of the Warmaster's plan commenced. The executioner's weapon was readied, not chainsword or bolter, but the life-eater virus. A singular monstrous command was about to be given, turning brother against brother in the most absolute and horrifying manner imaginable. The warrior's purpose is defined by the wars he has chosen to fight. For Battle Captain Nathaniel Garro of the 14 Legion, his war was declared over not by an enemy's blade, but by a Medicis diagnostic slate. A Terran-born veteran, his loyalty forged in the fires of unification, Garro was a son of the Emperor before he was a son of Mortarion. The grievous injuries catalogued by Legion chirurgeons rendered him unfit for the primary drop assault. He was removed, relegated, given command of the heavy frigate Eisenstein, and assigned to the quiet margins of the Isstvan system. The strategic display is clear. While the might of Horus's armada coiled into a dense cordon, a trap disguised as a muster, the Eisenstein patrolled the lonely outer void. This posting, an insult to any other Astartes of his standing, became the fulcrum upon which history would turn, placing him by accident on the edge of the abyss. On that silent bridge, Garro stood as a reluctant sentinel, tasked with intercepting anomalies. But the true enemy was not some Xenos fleet from the void. It was an anomaly that the Warmaster's meticulous plan had failed to account for, a flicker of truth in a sea of lies. Betrayal was not a blade in the back, but the cold, clinical loading of virus bombs into the macro cannons of your own flagship. This was the discovery that drove Captain Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children, once a paragon of the Legion, to commit the highest treason, the theft of a Thunderhawk gunship from the traitor vessel Andronius. His flight path, a searing green line across the fleet's tactical display, became a desperate race against the most profound damnation. The target, Isstvan III's surface, to warn the thousands of loyal brothers condemned to die, ignorant of the fleet turning its guns upon them. The pursuit was immediate. From the traitor cordon, Raven interceptors launched like shards of obsidian, ghosts of red malice tasked with silencing him. More damning, a new order crackled across the void, directed at the frigate Eisenstein, which lay directly in his path.
Terminate the rogue vessel on sight.
In the skies of a doomed world, Two futures converged: the desperate flight of one loyalist to save his brothers, and the terrible orders given to another. The fate of Saul Tarvitz now rested not with his declared enemies, but in the hands of strangers who wore the same sigil of terror, yet had been commanded to become his executioners. On the ash-choked plains of Isstvan III, amidst the first wave of supposedly triumphant Astartes, Captain Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children felt not victory, but the cold grip of suspicion. The deployment was too perfect, the silence from the fleet too absolute. Acting on this gnawing dread, he returned to the orbiting fleet, a lone warrior seeking truth in the command decks of his own legion. There, aboard the flagship Andronius, he uncovered the Betrayal in its full, monstrous scope. This recovered Vox transcript, sealed under clearance Omega, captures his desperate attempt to pierce the conspiracy. Across a sputtering high-orbit channel, Tarvitz reached out to the one man he believed might listen, Captain Nathaniel Garro of the Death Guard. His words a blade in the dark.
This is treachery. All of this. We are betrayed. The fleet is going to bombard the planet's surface with virus bombs.
The record shows Garro's incredulity, but Tarvitz, his life and honor forfeit, pressed on.
On my life I swear I do not lie to you, Nathaniel. Unless I can get a warning down there, every Astartes on Isstvan III is going to die.
With the Vox channel severed by the Warmaster's inescapable trap, Tarvitz was left with only one path. He could not remain in the heavens while his brothers were condemned below. Duty demanded he deliver the warning himself, a lone act of defiance against a fleet poised to commit the ultimate atrocity. On the command deck of the frigate Eisenstein, the calculus of loyalty became a razor's edge. Below, Isstvan III was a world scoured by virus fire. Above, battle captain Nathaniel Garro received his orders directly from the Warmaster's fleet, and with them, an impossible choice. The options presented a stark dichotomy. One path was that of the Legiones Astartes, the chain of command. It was simple, absolute.
Obey the Warmaster's direct orders. Fire on the fleeing loyalist Thunderhawk.
Maintain his standing in a legion now revealed as treacherous. Against this was pitted the honor oath, a sacred battle debt from the pre-Exor campaign, a trust in the desperate warnings of Saul Tarvitz. To follow this path meant embracing the unthinkable, committing mutiny against the Warmaster himself. As the diagram shows, Garro chose the oath. In that single defiant act, Nathaniel Garro ceased to be a captain of the Death Guard. He became something else, a fugitive, a renegade in the eyes of his own kin, bearing a desperate warning. He had chosen honor over obedience. But such a choice is not an end, it is merely the first step on a far darker road. Locked, the order from orbit was absolute: execute the fugitive, the target in the crosshairs. Saul Tarvitz, his brother Astartes, fleeing the grand betrayal in a stolen Thunderhawk gunship. The tactical log is brutally clear: target acquired, pursuit in progress. In that moment, Captain Nathaniel Garro faced a choice that would define an age. His legion had turned, his Primarch had turned. Obedience was treason, defiance was mutiny. On his auspices the targeting solution was stable, but in his soul a greater battle was fought and won. The log confirms it. Retargeting initiated.
Deception protocols active.
Using the sensor-choking chaos of Isstvan's upper atmosphere as his shield, Garro realigned his weapons, not on Tarvitz, but on the loyalist hunting interceptors flanking his position. It was a dereliction of duty on a scale almost unimaginable. A single decisive action, and then fire. The interceptor wing vaporized, the ruse complete. The final log entry reads, firing solution executed.
Thunderhawk escaping. Signal lost.
An oath had been chosen, not to a traitor Primarch, but to the distant light of the Emperor. But what becomes of a man who upholds his honor by betraying his brotherhood? He was no longer a battle captain of the Death Guard. He was an outcast, a renegade in the eyes of his own, and the galaxy now had a new, terrible name for men like him. Saul Tarvitz's warning was proven horrifically accurate. From the heavens, betrayal rained down not as shot and shell, but as a silent, creeping death. The traitor fleet dispersed the Life-Eater virus, a necrophage agent of forbidden science that dissolved organic matter on a molecular level. 8 billion souls, the planet's entire population, were rendered into a putrescent slurry, their very matter converted into a flammable miasmic gas that choked the world in a sickly green shroud. Then, as seen in this picked capture from a long-range auger, a single lance strike from orbit pierced the toxic atmosphere. The resulting firestorm was instantaneous and absolute, an act of planetary-scale incineration that turned Isstvan III into a funeral pyre. Yet because of one captain's bravery, not all were consumed. Deep within fortified bunkers, some 60,000 loyalist Astartes survived the Holocaust. The Warmaster's gambit was revealed. The mask of the loyal sun had been cast into the fire, exposing the face of the arch-traitor. For the galaxy, it was the first true damnation of the war. For the 60,000 survivors trapped beneath the scorched earth, it was merely the opening salvo. Escape was a concept, not a possibility. For Battle Captain Nathaniel Garro, his frigate Eisenstein lost amidst the Warmaster's triumphant armada in the Isstvan system. It was a prayer whispered into the void. Direct confrontation was suicide. The Eisenstein, a lone frigate, could not hope to survive the guns of the traitor fleet. And so Garro chose not the sword but the scalpel. He feigned a catastrophic failure, a tertiary fusion generator malfunction, exploiting rigid naval procedure that demanded a damaged vessel drop from formation to prevent a cascade detonation. As the strategic display shows, the Eisenstein peels away from the armada, a single point of light feigning death on a course of deceptive retreat. It was a fragile ruse. Every soul aboard held their breath, their lives balanced on the belief that their former brothers had not yet shed every last shred of doctrine. For precious minutes the deception held. The frigate, a ghost in its own fleet, drifted into the darkness between stars. But this was not escape, it was merely the drawing of a breath before the plunge. Silence from the frigate Eisenstein was the first sign. Aboard the bridge of his grand cruiser, First Captain Callus Typhon waited for a simple Vox confirmation that his part in the betrayal was complete. The confirmation never came. The deception had unraveled. Aboard the fleeing Eisenstein, a vicious, close-quarters purge had seen loyalists seize the vessel. Traitor Commander Ignatius Grolgor, entrusted to keep the ship silent, was now nothing but a corpse amidst the carnage. For a mind like Typhon's, a master of inexorable warfare, the absence of a signal was a message in itself. The first captain, a hunter by nature, realized the truth instantly. The mission was compromised. The prey had escaped the trap. He ordered his own massive flagship, the Terminus Est, to break formation. What was meant to be a quiet, system-wide withdrawal became a brutal, desperate chase. For the 70 loyalists aboard the Eisenstein, the void itself had become a new kind of trench warfare. They were no longer merely fleeing, they were being actively hunted by one of their own. One small frigate, carrying a truth that could shatter the galaxy, now raced against the shadow of a warship built for one purpose: to bring a slow, grinding and inevitable end. In the cold void of the Isstvan system, the tactical reality was an equation of annihilation. Aboard the heavy frigate Eisenstein, Battle Captain Nathaniel Garro was not fighting a battle, he was attempting to outrun a mathematical certainty. The diagnostic was stark. Vessel Alpha, the Terminus Est, a monstrous battle barge of a unique and ancient design, a relic of the Dark Age that served as the template for the later Despoiler class. Under the command of First Captain Callus Typhon, it was a predator, intact and fully armed, its advantage listed as overwhelming macro batteries, immense hull resilience. It was a fortress built to break worlds. Vessel Beta, the Eisenstein, a frigate, status, fleeing, critical internal combat damage. Its advantage, none. Garro, a loyalist son of the traitor Primarch Mortarion, had only one weapon left. The truth of the Horus Heresy burning in his ship's data banks. He was outgunned, outmassed, and utterly alone, a sliver of honor in a void filled with betrayal. The Terminus Est did not need to be fast. It only needed its massive gun batteries to find their mark once. For the Eisenstein, every strained pulse of its engines was a prayer, a desperate gamble to reach the system's jump point before its hull was peeled open to the unforgiving vacuum. For the loyalists aboard the frigate Eisenstein, the ghost of Isstvan was not a memory, but a predator given form. That form was the Terminus Est, and its master, First Captain Typhon, would not suffer traitors to his new cause to live. Picked captures from the encounter show the horrifying disparity. The Terminus Est, a Goliath of corrupted plasteel and diseased brass, unleashes punishing volleys from its lance batteries. Each crimson spear of energy is a death blow to a lesser ship. Here they strike the Eisenstein not to kill, but to torture. The frigate, a blade of grey steel against the abyss, suffers cascading damage. Explosions blossom across its spine.
Brace, brace. Geller field fluctuating. The warp drive is screaming. He's tearing us apart.
Captain Garro's evasive maneuvers are those of a master, but they are the desperate twitches of a netted fish. He pushes the Eisenstein's engines past every tolerance, past every prayer of the engine seers, running a gauntlet of pure destructive power. Somehow, impossibly, the frigate broke free of the kill zone, a wounded animal slipping from the jaws of a leviathan. But escaping the guns of the Terminus Est was not the same as escaping its poison. The long dark voyage to Terra had only just begun, and the ship's most lethal passenger was not one of Garro's loyalists. The frigate Eisenstein punched through the traitor blockade, but the cost was absolute. A victory paid for in blood, steel and souls, leaving a vessel not triumphant, but mortally wounded and bleeding into the void. The ship was a ghost, deaf and blind.
As our damaged schematic confirms, our astropathic core was utterly destroyed. Every sanctioned psyker dead.
The vital warning for Terra was now a silent scream trapped within a dying hull. Compounding this, the navigator's sanctum was compromised. The ship's sole guide through the Imperium lay dying, his third eye clouded by the very energies he was meant to command. A warp translation was no longer a matter of skill, but of suicidal probability. Even the ship's heart, its engine reliquary, was failing, its structural integrity collapsing under the strain of a full thrust that was their only hope of escape. To navigate the warp without a guide is madness. To do so in a failing ship is a death sentence. Yet to remain in real space was to await certain discovery and annihilation by the hunters that would surely follow. There was no good choice, only the choice of how to die. With the Isstvan system burning behind him, and the guns of his own legion closing in, Battle Captain Nathaniel Garro was left with no path to victory.
Only a path to survival.
Trapped by the traitor fleet, all conventional means of interstellar communication were severed. The Warmaster's perfidy was absolute.
Garro's only remaining weapon was the truth, a truth that had to reach Terra.
His vessel, the frigate Eisenstein *, had one final desperate option, an unnavigated emergency translation into the warp.
A blind jump. It was a death sentence, trading the certainty of orbital bombardment for the shrieking, soul-devouring impossibilities of the Imperium.
In the face of this, Garro's command was simple, his faith unwavering even as the ship's augurs depicted the hellish, screaming visages coalescing in the rift ahead.
He was a son of Mortarion, a warrior of the Death Guard, and he would not falter.
As the Eisenstein * plunged into that raw wound in reality, it escaped the guns of Isstvan, but survival was not deliverance. It was merely the exchange of one executioner for another, infinitely more patient and cruel. In the grand, terrible tapestry of history, how often does the fate of a galaxy hinge upon a single thread, one frigate, its hull screaming from the torments of the warp, fleeing a massacre that would sunder reality. This was the flight of the Eisenstein, and this was the moment the future was saved, and irrevocably damned. The Warmaster's grand betrayal was predicated on speed and secrecy, a serpent's strike aimed at the heart of the Imperium, a decapitation of terror before the body politic even knew it was dead. But the flight of Battle Captain Nathaniel Garro shattered this elegant strategy. Every hour the Eisenstein survived its tortured passage was an hour Horus's timetable crumbled. Upon his harrowing arrival in the Sol system, his message, seared into the Vox records, was simple and horrific.
The Warmaster is a traitor. Isstvan is a graveyard made by his hand.
In that instant, Primarch Rogel Dawn, the Praetorian of Terror, received the news not with shock, but with grim acceptance. His immediate response laid the foundation for the next 10,000 years. The fortification of the Sol system began. And none of it, the warning, the time, the defense, would have been possible without the sacrifice that started it all. On the poisoned soil of Isstvan III, loyalists under men like Saul Tarvitz waged a hopeless war. They died to a man, but their deaths were a purchase paid in blood for the hours Captain Garro needed to escape. Their defiance was the anvil upon which the traitor's schedule was broken. Thus, the ripple effect of the Eisenstein saved the Imperium. But what precisely was saved? Not the golden dream of unity, for that had been murdered on the black sands of Isstvan. What was saved was a corpse empire, a realm of fear and perpetual war, presided over by a dying god upon a golden throne. The flight of one loyal man bought humanity its survival, but in the grim darkness of the far future, survival is its own unique damnation.
This concludes our examination of the Horus Heresy's fulcrum point. This archival record is now sealed. Subscribe to the archives and comment below on what lore the Auspex should scan next.